Welcome to Give Smart, the video series where we break down the legal side of giving. I'm Isabella, and in each episode, we talk to experts who help companies and nonprofits navigate the complex but important world of compliance and charitable fundraising. Today's episode is all about charitable registration. I'm joined by Patrick Hogan, an attorney at Mill Law Center, where he focuses on nonprofit law and regulatory compliance. Patrick has extensive experience guiding nonprofits through the complexities of charitable solicitation and governance. He recently played a key role in launching Mill Law Center's multi-state charitable registration service, powered by Changes Technology. Patrick, thanks for being here.
Oh, you're welcome, Isabella. Thanks for having me.
Of course. To kick things off, can you just introduce yourself and share a bit more about your background and the kind of work you do at Mill Law Center?
Yeah, definitely. So like Isabella said, my name is Patrick Hogan. I'm a nonprofit law attorney at Mill Law Center. We focus on working with mission-aligned organizations. So I've been an attorney for a while. I've worked in the nonprofit space for a long time. So I've worked with small, grassroots operations to major foundations. I've worked on the formation to dissolution to really everything in between. But like you mentioned, a pretty major part of my practice is compliance work for nonprofits, including charitable registration. So I've been doing that for a long time now, and really enjoy working with nonprofits.
Us too. Cool. So let's start with the basics. I think that'd be helpful. Why is charitable registration such an important part of nonprofit compliance? And what are the risks if a nonprofit skips that step or doesn't get it right?
Well, so I guess the most compelling reason is it's the law in almost 40 states and DC, and so that's the major risk if you don't do it or even overlook it. You can't just say I didn't know; it's still breaking the law. So that's obviously the important part. I would say another major important part is donor trust. So in charities, people work really hard for their money. It's hard-earned money. When they give it to your charity, they don't want to see it wasted. And so if your organization registers properly where it should, it's usually a good sign that you are a well-governed, compliant organization. And then it also puts you in that state database where donors can look up your information. They can look at your 990, your audit, and they can see, what percentage goes to overhead, what percentage goes to program services. And so in this world, I think it's just paramount to cultivate donor trust. And I think charitable registration is an important part of that. And so as far as the risk of not registering, so just going back, it's against the law. So if you are soliciting in one state and you get caught, most likely you'll get a letter. State regulators, they don't want to shut charities down. They're really looking for compliance. But they do have the authority to issue fines, enjoin you from soliciting in that state. They can send you a cease and desist or even get an order to stop you. So those are the major risks if for not registering.
What have you found to be the most challenging part of registration when a charity approaches you? And what is their main concern when they come to you?
The scope of it. So yes, so like I said, almost 40 states plus DC require registration. In this day and age, most any organization, has a donate here button on their website probably. So that's really the hardest part, is kind of looking internally at operations, where are we getting donors from, where are we getting our money from, and then deciding what states or jurisdictions you need to register in. That's really kind of the hardest part, is just kind of launching off, because it can be quite overwhelming initially.
Do you find that most of your clients require nationwide registration, or do some of your clients just kind of pick and choose the states that are more important to them?
So I'd say initially, most organizations do just kind of start off picking and choosing. But then as they grow, I just always advise them, look at where your money's coming from, your contributions, and see if there's any specific states that are, a little more new that you're not used to seeing. And then, kind of go from there to make sure you are compliant in that state. But
Makes
there's
sense.
definitely a tipping point. I would say there are like 15 to 20 states where if you're registered in that many, it just kind of makes sense to register in them all. And if you're registered in that many states, you probably are already soliciting in all those other states as well. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's all just so fact intensive, depending on circumstances.
Your firm recently announced the launch of a new multi-state charitable registration service, so this is very apt to what we're talking about right now. What drove that decision as a firm, and how did you see this supporting the nonprofits you work with?
Yeah, so I mean, I just encounter a lot of clients that they go out on their own, which, with good intentions, but it can be fine sometimes, but a lot of times you'll get organizations where they have one staff member doing the handling the registration internally, which can work. But then the problem is if that person leaves, they have all the knowledge of what's going on. So it can be very hard to transition that knowledge to a new person. Or in the worst case scenario, you have one person who's in charge of these filings, but they're not really doing it correctly. But nobody in the organization actually knows that until they leave. I've seen that a handful of times. So we just wanted to give potential clients, a way to outsource that work. Kind of my motto is always, we'll handle the compliance work for you so you can focus on, like the actual core mission work versus filing a bunch of state forms.
Awesome. I feel like that would be extremely helpful, especially for those, like what you were saying, like if these charities are registered in 15 to 20 states already, just let your firm handle the rest of them and and
Yeah.
and all of them actually.
Yeah, and and then your staff can really focus on the core work because this takes a lot of time to do because there's
Yeah.
every state has different forms, different regulations, different attachment requirements, different filing fees. It's just all over the place. It's a lot to handle.
Yeah. Registration can be tedious and quite time intensive, also, like what you were saying, especially across dozens of states. How does technology, like what we've built at Change, help streamline the process for both your firm and for your nonprofit clients?
It's a good question. So I don't want to age myself, but I've been doing the registration for a while. When I first started, we used Excel spreadsheets for every single client. You'd pull it up separately. It was color coded. It was all manual. But now, there's Change has brought this platform that we can use to automate the process. It also takes out a lot of the mistakes that human error mistakes that can happen when it used to be just kind of writing over forms instead of producing new forms every time. For like a typical week, I'd be signing hundreds of cover letters. So just having this technology where we can it's easier to be transitioned into the state regulator system with Change, and we can process these registrations much more efficiently.
I'm wondering if the communication between your nonprofit clients and your firm is improved with something like Change.
Yes, because of the dashboard. So that's a really nice tool to be able to have clients just look at the dashboard. Because it used to be they would have to email me for like an update on their chart of state registrations. But yeah, and then also they can log in and see like the annual questionnaire that we fill part of it out, they fill part of it out. So yeah, it gives the client kind of a look under the hood, basically, of charitable registration. They can see how we're doing it.
Let's shift over to cause marketing. What do nonprofits need to have in place before they partner with a company or before they participate in a campaign? Are there any legal or compliance steps they often overlook?
Yeah, well, so first thing is make sure the nonprofit is registered in the states where it needs to be. And then the second, make sure your partner is registered because they're going to have to be registered. And then third, have a written agreement outlining the terms of the partnership, who's going to report what, how funds will be raised. And also, you have to have, from the nonprofit perspective, have some protections in that written agreement to cover yourself for compliance issues. So say if the cause marketing company, they're not properly registered and they start getting calls from regulators, but your nonprofit is working with them, that could be a little risky to your organization. And then also, you should understand, from the nonprofit, you should understand the reporting requirements for cause marketing. So most of the reporting requirements, it falls to, the other side, the cause marketer. But there's still some things you have to do, like notices, and you should really understand what those requirements are. If you have to hire a professional, do it, because it has to be done properly, or else you can get into some more significant trouble down the road.
Hmm. I'd love to also ask you about California AB 488. It's had a major impact on online charitable fundraising. That's what we've noticed here at Change. How have you seen it change the landscape for nonprofits? And what challenges or misconceptions have you seen since it went into effect?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, and it's coming to the rest of the country too. Most things start in California or New York and then kind of spread. And I was actually just left a presentation by some state regulators, it was from Ohio and DC, and they were talking how they're watching AB 488 in California and basically just learning from the mistakes before they start rolling it out in their own states. So it's soon going to be a nationwide thing. But I think the biggest shift is that it created an entirely new type of organization that has to report to the Attorney General, like a GoFundMe. Before they were just kind of barely outside of the scope of the Attorney General, their jurisdiction. So I think overall it's better for transparency, but it's created so much confusion. Two things I've seen are I've seen charities being reported as platform charities on other fundraising platforms registrations, and then they get a letter from the AG, the charity, saying, hey, why aren't you registered properly, even if they're really not required to. And really it just takes a letter back to the AG explaining why you're not a platform charity, but it's just additional work for you. And then the other issue I've seen is that, so the fundraising platforms, they have to check, with the California registry, and if you're not on like the good list, they'll take you off their platform. And I've had a couple clients, it's relatively easy to be out of compliance just due to a simple mistake. So I had one where they filed their annual renewal, but for some reason half of the 990 didn't print correctly, or it wasn't processed correctly by the AG, and so the renewal got sent back. They got put on the bad list. They got a call from their fundraising platform saying, you're not in good standing, we have to take you down. And so then all of a sudden they're not raising money anymore, and dealing with the AG takes time. Even if it was their mistake or just an honest mistake, it still takes time to get everything corrected before you can get back on that good list. So those are the two major things I've seen.
Wow, that's really interesting that those other states are already starting to try to better plan or try to avoid the mistakes that California has been
Yeah, they're
kind of
definitely taking
making.
notes. They're definitely
Yeah.
taking notes, and my guess is you'll start seeing this roll out in other parts of the country relatively soon.
We sort of touched on this a bit earlier, but for nonprofits that are looking to start fundraising in multiple states, so let's say, for example, you're a smaller, more regional nonprofit, but maybe you're expanding or you're adding more chapters in other states. What's one piece of advice you'd give them before they get going?
I mean, just start with a plan. Have a plan before you go live, before the campaign goes live. And really, that could just be as simple as just have a map with where your donors are. So you can just get a better idea of what states you potentially have to register in, and so you're actually prepared. Instead, because the biggest mistake I see is waiting until after the fact. And it's a lot harder, it's much easier to do things correctly up front instead of trying to fix it on the back end. And then once you do have a plan, talk to someone. It could be a lawyer, a service provider, and create a roadmap for for registration, for compliance, that fits with within your budget, what you're doing, etc. Just so you can plan ahead. And
That's
really,
great
if
advice.
you have questions, you can just call the Attorney General's office. They are very helpful. They will, you can explain your situation, and they'll help you understand what your reporting requirements are. If you're trying to do this on your own, they're not against charities, even though they're the regulators. They are with charities. They just want to make sure donor funds are protected.
Of course, yeah. It all comes back to consumer protection, donor protection, essentially. One last question before we wrap up. I was wondering if you have a favorite cause marketing campaign you've seen recently or in years past, one that stood out for its impact or for its creative approach.
So I have kind of a cop-out answer. I don't have one in particular, but I do. I like the campaigns where it makes sense for them to be partnered. So I'm trying to think of an actual example. It'd be like a shoe company and then a charity that provides shoes to youth, versus where you see some where it just doesn't make any sense why these two are partnering. Those are, they just don't feel authentic as the ones that are truly partners. Those are what I really like, and I
Cool.
think those are the most successful.
I agree. I was thinking of, I just lost it, but I was also thinking of something like athletic shoe related, but where they then support a nonprofit like Girls on the Run or
Yeah,
like that sort of thing, or
yeah,
like a tech company that supports like Black Girls Code or just like that
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
If it just doesn't gel together, it just seems inauthentic, I guess, to me.
Yeah. I think that's great advice too for nonprofits as they look for a corporate partner to fundraise with or to do cause marketing campaigns with. The authenticity can make a big difference. Well, thanks so much, Patrick. This has been really insightful, and thanks for walking us through just like the practical realities of charitable registration and nonprofit compliance.
Yeah,
I appreciate your time.
you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching. If you're supporting nonprofits or running charitable campaigns at your company, be sure to follow the Give Smart series for more insights on doing good. See you next time.